the record, I don't think we ought to mislead the American people. This isn't your budget. This budget was put together by OMB in the White House. Every White House does it, sends us a budget. We take a look at it. Some of it we adopt, most of it we ignore. So all this play acting for the cameras is just that, play acting. I want to take you down memory lane. I'm going to come back to the extraordinary job you've done at the Department of Education, which was, when you took it over, was the poster child for excess federal government, chock full of a bunch of woke race baiters whose job was to get in the way of our teachers and our teachers' age. But I want to take you down memory lane because you've done this despite all of the obstacles. Do you remember when my colleague, Senator Schumer, said the following? I'm going to quote. Americans don't want a radical, out-of-touch billionaire slashing funding for public schools. Linda McMahon is not qualified to lead America's public education, but that's why Trump nominated her. She's the perfect choice to burn our public education system to the ground, end quote. Remember that?
I do.
You remember when Congressman Mark Pocan, I could be mispronouncing his name, so I apologize, said, quote, Linda McMahon should stick to wrestling. You remember that?
I actually don't remember that one.
Boy, you can only be young
Did
once.
pretty well with that, though.
You can only be young once, but boy, you can always be immature, can't you? Do you remember when The Nation magazine, very, very democratic magazine, published an article entitled, Linda McMahon's only qualification as Education Secretary is a history of spreading hate? And this is what they said. Quote, she is 76 years old and wants her legacy to be turning the bigotry that made her so obscenely rich into public policy. She's a simpleton. My God. I want extra time, Madam Chair. Everybody else has gotten it. I have been so impressed with the work that you have done in lifting up elementary and secondary education and trying to whittle down that giant rogue beast that we call the Department of Education, the work you've done on school choice and returning authority back to the states and local government and fighting anti-Semitism and fighting for women's sports. In a couple of minutes, tell me about your accomplishments. I know you can't do it in 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm glad I really don't remember a lot of those quotes.
Oh, there's more.
But
they hit you with everything but a chair. It's disgusting.
Well, I can tell you what I believe we've accomplished a lot. As I mentioned prior to visiting so many states and to see what kinds of education systems many of those states have, from classical education, from that I saw in Florida and other states, to states that have really accepted returning their reading programs to evidence-based phonics, and we've seen the response to that from many states who are looking now to take those same programs into numeracy to make sure that the math scores are coming up. When you walk into a department and you look across the country and the President of the United States has told you that he was embarrassed and ashamed by the state of education in our country, and not only across the country, but in its place in the world. And he expects you to do something to make a difference in that, because what we've been doing is not working. The innovations that we have seen to bring the level of schools' reading and math programs up is the innovations in the states. They don't come from the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. So what I hope to do is to put together a toolkit to leave behind and to share with these states, this is what is working. These are some of the things that we have seen, the Mississippi Miracle, Mississippi was next to last, in reading. You know that very well, Senator. And they threw their own invention. It took about 10 years, but they didn't give up, and they kept doing it. And the steps that they took and made, Louisiana adopted, Florida adopted, Tennessee, other states. And so we have seen through the state's innovation and continued funding, which will continue to come through government programs, they have made a difference. And that's why states are the center of what's going to be successful for them, whether it is looking at their children, with disabilities. That is why in our budget proposal, we have asked for the largest increase, $500 million to go into IDEA funding because there are more students who need these. So I think that we've made some incredibly significant accomplishments, and we've just begun. I've only been here just a little bit over a year, but we're on the road to continue to look at the states and what we need to help them with their funding to take on more of these programs. And those programs that are federal will stay in the federal government. Title A stays in the federal government. IDEA stays in the federal government to make that funding, but to send it, directly to the states. So I'm pleased with where we've come so far, but we clearly have a lot of work yet to do. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your service.
Welcome back. The Senate budget hearings took a highly personal and ideological turn today. Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy used his time not to grill Education Secretary Linda McMahon on line items, but to mount a fierce defense of her tenure while taking aim at her harshest critics. In a striking exchange, Kennedy praised McMahon for maintaining her composure in the face of intense partisan attacks, before launching into a retrospective of the political arrows that have been aimed at her since her appointment. Kennedy opened the segment by dismissing the entire hearing format as a hollow exercise in political branding, explicitly reminding viewers that the budget being debated originates in the White House, not with the Secretary herself. All this play acting for the cameras is just that. Play acting. You are so cool, literally and figuratively. They call you names and you just ignore them. Kennedy isn't wrong about the theatrical nature of these hearings. Capitalizing on the moment, he expertly contrasted the grandstanding of his colleagues with McMahon's calm demeanor. By peeling back the curtain on how Washington budgets are actually made, he cleverly neutralized future policy attacks from the opposition before they could even be leveled. The core of Kennedy's time was spent reading aggressive past statements from prominent Democrats and media outlets. He cited Senator Chuck Schumer calling McMahon an out-of-touch billionaire intent on burning public education to the ground, a congressman's jibe that she should stick to wrestling, and a Progressive magazine article labeling her a simpleton. Through it all, McMahon admitted she had tuned out the noise, telling the senator she didn't even remember most of those specific insults. Presenter's perspective. Kennedy's decision to read these insults into the congressional record was a calculated double-edged sword. While it successfully painted the opposition as petty and mean-spirited, it also highlights just how toxic Washington confirmation and oversight culture has become. McMahon's wrestling background has always been an easy target for critics, but dismissing an entire executive's capability based purely on her corporate history ignores her actual administrative record. When given the floor to list her accomplishments over her first year in office, McMahon leaned heavily into a conservative, states-first approach to education. She praised localized initiatives like the Mississippi Miracle, which utilized phonics-based reading strategies to boost literacy, and argued that true innovation comes from the states, not the federal bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. She also highlighted a proposed $500 million increase in federal funding for students with disabilities to be sent directly to state local governments. This is the heart of the modern conservative education strategy: shrink the federal footprint and empower local governments. McMahon's focus on proven, state-level literacy models like Mississippi's is a strong, data-driven argument. However, her critics will point out that while a toolkit for states is helpful, the federal government's primary leverage is funding and civil rights enforcement. Handing all authority back to the states sounds excellent in theory, but it risks creating massive disparities in education quality depending on what zip code a child grows up in. Whether Secretary McMahon's decentralized toolkit approach will successfully reverse declining national test scores remains to be seen, but today proved she has no shortage of fierce defenders on Capitol Hill.